Good day and welcome to another episode of Grassroots Vegan. How are my fellow frugies doing today? What is a frugie, you may ask? A frugie is a frugivore, and we are all by nature frugivores, so I can call you my fellow frugies. So when I use the term frugie, I mean frugivore. So today I would like to talk about does fruit make you smarter? Okay. I'm not going to get into a scientific discussion to try to prove this factually. I'm going to talk about my own personal experience with fruit and intelligence. But I will read a passage from an article that I found on the internet. Now, granted, anything you get off the internet as presented as fact is not necessarily so, but I think this is pretty consistent with actual research that has been done on the brain and what fuels the brain. Okay, I'll read it to you. Glucose is the form of sugar that travels in your bloodstream to fuel the mitochondrial furnaces responsible for your brain power. Glucose is the only fuel. Now, let me read that again. Glucose is the only fuel normally used by brain cells. Because neurons cannot store glucose, they depend on the bloodstream to deliver a constant supply of this precious, let me repeat again, precious fuel. Glucose. Where does glucose come from? It comes from carbohydrates. And the best form of glucose to get for your brain to be fueled is from fruit. Now, let me talk about my own experience in this area. On this fruitarian lifestyle, I have been tested in ways that would have challenged this diet. And this diet has always proven to be successful in dealing with those challenges. And so I'm talking about working at jobs that are physically demanding and eating nothing but fruit throughout the day and being able to meet those physical demands far better than my fellow workers who were eating a lot of meat and dairy along with some fruit. And also other challenges that were highly stressful situations in my life that I did not impose upon myself, but they were there and I had to deal with them, and they were highly stressful, and yet I was able to cope and work through those difficult times with clarity of thought and focus. And again, I attribute it to a predominantly fruit diet. But today I'd like to talk about intelligence. Does fruit actually make you smarter? Now, I don't consider myself a genius. I know I'm not a genius. I'm an average intelligence individual. In fact, I might even not be average. I don't know. Anyways, so last summer, in the early summer, I was getting ready, preparing to write my first exam in the Canadian Securities course. And that day, the day of the exam, let me just sort of digress a little bit and share with you the day that just before the exam. The exam was at 2 o'clock, so I arrived downtown Toronto at around lunchtime and decided to have lunch in a courtyard nearby where I would be having my exam. And it was great because, there's one thing about, there's no excuse. If you work in an office downtown Toronto, there are plenty of healthy alternatives. You do not need to eat junk food. You do not need to eat meat. You don't have to eat dairy. You don't have to eat any animal products. There's plenty of vegan alternatives available in the downtown core. And so I had no trouble getting myself some nice bananas in the courtyard. There, at that time, there was the farmer's market there that day. So I was able to pick up some fresh strawberries. So I was gorging on bananas and strawberries. And I think I even had a freshly squeezed orange juice. And what was interesting about having lunch in this courtyard outdoors, there was a stand where a guy had a barbecue, and I think he was cooking up shish kebabs or something like that, but definitely meat for sure. And right beside his stand was a healthy alternative stand where you could buy quinoa salad or chickpea salad or other forms of salads and other healthy vegetarian and vegan alternatives. Now, the lineup for the barbecue stand that was offering the barbecued meat, it seemed like it was endless, whereas the lineup for the healthy alternative stand was tiny. You could get through it in a couple minutes. And if you looked, and when I looked around at the farmers market area, there wasn't a lot of people there either. And I thought, this is really quite amazing how you have office workers that probably have about 1 hour for lunch, and they're willing to give up about half of that hour to line up to get themselves a meat lunch. Whereas there was all these wonderful, healthy alternatives. Anyways, I digress. So I had my healthy fruitarian lunch, and it was good. Oh, the strawberries were amazing. And then I went in to write my exam, and it was a 3-hour exam. I completed it, and it was multiple choice, 100 questions, and I completed it in 1 hour. So I'm thinking, like, okay, I've got all this extra time. So what I decided to do was hang around and just go over the questions again and again and making sure that I had them correct. And sure enough, there were some of them there that were not, I had to redo them again, and I redid them. And then I just sat around and waited. And I thought, you know what, I'll leave about 10 minutes before the exam time is up. And so 10 minutes before the exam time was up, I decided to get up and go, and I went to hand in my papers, and the woman looked at my papers. Now, you had two pieces. You had the note pad, or the note folder that had the pages with the questions in them, and then it had the possible answers, the multiple choices below. And then you had another sheet of paper, which at the beginning I had to sign and make sure my personal information was correct on there. Now, I hadn't done a multiple choice question probably since high school. And so I didn't realize that I was supposed to write the actual answers. I was supposed to put them down on that separate sheet, which basically gets fed into a computer, and the computer reads the answers that you have given and then determines which ones are right or wrong. I had wrote down, I had filled in the blocks that were in the notebook, and so the woman said, "You haven't put the answers on the right piece of paper. This does not qualify." And I have 10 minutes left. And I said, "Well, I'm screwed. I don't know what to do." And she said, "Well, just go down and try to transfer the answers to the proper paper in the next 10 minutes. And believe me, they don't give you any leeway here. When the exam time is up, it is up. That's it." So I go back to my chair, and I'm really under pressure now, like a lot of pressure. I thought, this is it. I'm doomed. Now, it's not the end of the world. I'd have to rewrite it again, but that would cost me money, and just the thought of having to rewrite it was dreadful. Anyways, so I go back to my seat, and I'm just quickly transferring the answers. Now, the problem with this was, if I made one mistake with one of the questions let's say it was supposed to be answer A, and I put into answer B, if I put question 3 in question 4, then all the rest of the answers would be wrong from there. So I actually did manage to get all the answers transferred, but I wasn't sure if I did it correctly. So I waited another 2 weeks before I got the results back to find out how I did. And I got 82%. Not bad. I mean, so does that prove that eating fruit is makes you smarter? Not necessarily. It doesn't prove that, but let's just look at the context here too. There was a lot of other things going on in my life as well. Well, first of all, Canadian securities. It's about finance. It's about money. This was a field that was completely novel to me at that time in terms of going into any real depth about it. Prior to that, I was an artist. So here I was going into a completely foreign area for me. And so there was that side of it. And my math, I mean, prior to that was terrible. Even now, my math is not that great. And then here, I had to learn how to calculate the yield to maturity on bonds. And funny enough, it was the math questions that I did the best in. And it's probably because I focused the most on that. But on top of that, I was working as an assistant property manager at the time, and I was looking after my ailing mother who was dying. And in fact, right after the exam, I just drove out to Brampton to be with my mother. So there was a lot of things going on in my life around having to study for that exam. And the fact that the whole field was novel to me. And to be able to pull off those kind of grades, I think it was exceptional. I was proud of myself. And I did the second exam, and I ended up averaging 81% in the course. Now, what I experienced, my experience in that area. Now, let me make it very clear. Just because you eat fruit doesn't mean you can go write an exam and pass. You still have to study for it. But this is what I find by eating and living a fruitarian lifestyle, is that I feel like my concentration is better, my focus is better, my mental clarity is better. And it makes sense because I'm feeding my body the glucose that my brain needs for fuel, that enables me to take on mentally stressful situations. And, I compare that to when I was in university in the early 80s, when I was eating predominantly junk food, like fast food restaurant stuff, and not getting a lot of sleep and living an unhealthy lifestyle. And by my third year, I was getting average grades, and by my third year, I was in hospital because my health was failing me. So had I known about eating and living a fruitarian lifestyle, I think the situation could have been quite different. So, there's other factors too, like a good night's sleep is equally as important as eating properly. But if you really want to get the best performance from your brain, just like you want to get great performance from your body, you need to feed it the right fuel. And the right fuel is sugar. That is it right there. So, a high carbohydrate diet. Now, at that time, when I did the Canadian Securities exam, I was eating raw till 4. And so I was eating predominantly fruits and vegetables throughout the day. And then by dinner time, I'd have a cooked meal, which worked for me well. It's just now I've chose to go predominantly raw because I just feel that much better on it. But still, raw to 4 is a good way as well. So you want to be smart, fruit up, but also you got to study as well. You got to do the work. Okay, there's no freebies here. But the fruit, you get fruited up, your brain's going to work well, and you're going to be able to concentrate on your homework, and you're going to be able to get great grades at school. Take care, and have a wonderful day.